Hi, good morning. I'm David Knight. I work on the team that operate FROOT at ISC. So yesterday we saw the first attack with a significant impact against root name servers for quite some time. And I'm going to talk about the observations, very preliminary observations we made at FROOT yesterday. I guess a lot of people have probably seen this graph. This is RIPE-NCC's DNSMon, and this particular picture shows the availability or the ability to answer queries of the 13 root name servers. You see there each row is representing one server, and yeah, the scarier the color, the worse the ability at that time of that server to answer queries. So you see the attack started very abruptly at 10 a.m. UTC, and yeah, some servers were affected worse than others. What we saw, again, very abrupt begin to the attack. Our normal traffic there is almost lost. It's probably around 10 megabit. And we saw it very quickly increase. Now in this graph it looks like it's increasing to 800. As I discovered last night, how we put this graph together isn't quite correct. This is showing what's actually arriving at our servers. Now, the bulk of our servers have 100 megabit interfaces, so what we're counting here is where these have been maxed out at a couple of nodes. We're only able to count that node received 200 megabits, whereas as I move on, we'll see that these two nodes in particular is where the bulk of the traffic that we saw arrived. Now, our node in Seoul, again, the servers there have 100 meg interfaces, so when we look at the traffic stats for that, we would see it looking like 200, but whereas if we actually look at the router interface, we see that even the router interface, which was gigabit, was maxed out also. So we have to assume that we were actually getting more than gigabit at that particular node. And the other node that saw a significant increase in traffic was in Beijing. It maxed out around 300, and then we believe that networks in China very quickly started filtering this. So we're not sure exactly just how much traffic we would have seen there. We did see traffic at other nodes also. Hong Kong saw an increase, but nothing nearly as significant as this. And also in Amsterdam, our node which is attached to the AMSIC saw a significant increase in traffic. Now, it's obviously quite distant to the three nodes which have seen the bulk of this, but I think we peer at AMSICs twice. We have twice as much peering at AMSICs than we do anywhere else. So obviously a lot of bigger networks are there, and we're carrying the traffic to Amsterdam. Back to the DNSMon graph again. On the first picture I showed, saw that FROOT was continuing to serve during the attack, but we see that from certain vantage points, F service was degraded, but in the main, service to end users across the internet was alive and well, but for particular points, there was a certain degradation of service. But that's how our model is supposed to work. The idea being that because we have these local nodes which are only visible to direct peers, if attack traffic is originating in that area, then only that node should receive that traffic, and other nodes out with that region shouldn't see it. And so our node in Ottawa sees almost nothing, if nothing at all, of the attack traffic. We did see some odd shapes in the traffic to other nodes further from the region where the bulk of this was going on, and we have to assume that some networks have been doing ad hoc filtering to protect themselves, and which happened within an hour or so of the attack beginning. If you remember the picture a couple of slides back, this very abruptly cuts off, whereas we saw a much smoother decay at those nodes actually in region. What this is just, we have approximately, I think, 36 nodes globally, or 37, and during the attack, more than half of the traffic was arriving at one of them, and that was in Seoul. The other one there, the next biggest one is Beijing, and then the yellowish one there is our global node. That's the one node which is visible globally across the internet, and so we assume, or it's picking up the scatter, which isn't being captured by these two nodes actually in the region. And then the 7% there is all of the other nodes, which is about 34 or 35 local nodes, which among all 35 of those nodes, all the rest of the traffic was distributed, and most of those didn't see any at all. For example, in South America, we saw almost no attack traffic whatsoever. Now, it's important to stress that I'm talking about the traffic coming from a specific region. We don't know exactly where it's coming from. We haven't done in-depth analysis of this yet. This is very preliminary, based purely on, we think that we can triangulate source of traffic because of where the nodes are, and that we have a reasonable distribution of nodes, and we should only see traffic from direct peers. But more in-depth analysis, actually looking into the traffic a lot deeper, will go on in ISC's OARC. And also looking more deeply into what the actual attack packets looked like. Looking at it very preliminary, we see that they're bigger than normal. They're more than 350 bytes, mostly partially formed DNS messages, a mixture of updates and queries, and some which are just broken altogether. So really, based on this very preliminary look at what we saw operationally, we think that our Anycast setup did what it was supposed to. We believe that the traffic mostly originated in the Korea-China area, and we managed to contain it in that area. But yeah, I keep stressing that this was a very preliminary look at things, mostly from just looking at graphs of where traffic appeared. And there will be much more in-depth analysis of this going on, based on, we captured the attack traffic at these nodes, and we'll be looking deeply into that in ISC's OARC. And that captured data will be available to OARC members, and once the analysis is complete, there will be something published to the community at large. And that's me. Is there any questions?
Any questions for Dave? And there's 3 minutes for questions, sir.
Just to mirror what you're saying, this is about the same as what we saw for I. We saw less total attack traffic. The burst above normal only came to about 60 megabytes globally. So, but about the same distribution.
Okay. Andrei?
Andrei Rachevsky, RIPE NCC. Well, for K wasn't impacted as big as some other servers. Most of the traffic we saw in Tokyo node, which actually corresponds to what you observed, David. Another comment, you mentioned DNS mono. I see some people opening this server and may experience some slowness. I must say that this DNS attack was mentioned on Slashdot, and the main contents of the article was the URL to DNSMon, which put our server on another DDoS attack. So please be patient. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Dave.